In 1993, Liu Xu was born. When parents see their long-awaited son become a daughter, they feel as uncomfortable as drinking a cup of aged bitter tea, but they have both given birth. What should they do? Take care of it. In 1998, Liu Xu lost her father. A disease took away my father's life. Little Willow Catkins didn't know what was wrong with the people around her. Seeing them crying non-stop around her sleeping father, she felt uncomfortable and burst into tears. In 2000, Liu Xu went to school. Skipping the Willow Catkins in the preschool class, learning the knowledge of the first grade is not difficult. In 2010, Liu Xu dropped out of school. Liu Xu said she doesn't want to read anymore. No one knows why Liu Xu, who has always had good grades, doesn't want to study anymore. But Liu Xu wanted to drop out of school, but her sister didn't agree. In 2016, Liu Xu graduated. Where should she go on the road ahead? Willow Catkins. The road ahead is winding and winding, like a long mist. It will amplify your fear and erode your inner self. However, even if surrounded by darkness, we must seek an unknown way out in the darkness. We cannot predict the future, but we need to bravely face the unknown. Chapter 1 is about to give birth. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The midsummer of 1993. At night, there is no wind and the air is stuffy and hot. The night in Catkins village, like most villages of this era, is shrouded in darkness and silent. Occasionally, a few barks of dogs were heard, but soon calmed down. At 11 o'clock at night, in the countryside without entertainment, every household has fallen asleep. The dilapidated cottage of the Liu family in Catkins village was lit up. On the earthen kong covered with straw and wool felt, a woman's painful voice could be heard. Lao Lu, I seem to be giving birth, you. Get up quickly and go call our mother. The man sleeping on the side heard his wife shout and quickly got up. Daughter-in-law, hold on, I'll go now. He grabbed his pants and put them on his body. Without time to put on his coat, he jumped off the earthen kong and put on his shoes before running out. The woman on the kong spoke out in pain, call your sister. In law. 2. The sound of the door bolt being pulled open was somewhat harsh, mixed with the voice of a man. Got it. The woman lay on the kong, her emaciated face twisted together due to pain, her body bent into a shrimp shape, while her hands gently caressed her high and bulging belly. The pain was severe all over her body, so she could only gently stroke her stomach and whispered, Son, be good, don't worry. Your father will soon bring your grandmother and aunt over. As soon as they come, you can come out. She caressed her sharp belly, although the pain was unbearable all over her body, the kindness in her eyes could not be concealed. Outside the door, 1, 2, and 3 little radishes stretched their heads and looked at the woman on the kong. Seeing the woman moaning in pain, the biggest carrot head whispered, Mother, what's wrong with you? The woman turned her head to look at the children outside the door, with a twisted smile on her face. She whispered, Mom's okay, Mom's going to have a younger brother. Go to bed quickly. Big Flower, take care of your sisters and don't let them kick the covers. The custom here is that when women give birth, children and men are not allowed to enter the delivery room. Even if it hasn't been born yet, the child can't come in. A dirty place, afraid of children coming in and getting contaminated with unclean things. Got it, Mom. Dehua carefully closed the door and took the hands of her 2 younger sisters as she walked towards the next room. Entering the room, the youngest child whispered, Sister, why is your mother crying? Dehua lifted her little sister onto the kong and took off her shoes, saying, Mom is going to give birth to a little brother for us, it hurts in her stomach. The second person took off his shoes, supported the edge of the kong, struggled to climb up the kong, got into the bed, and with a small head exposed, asked, Sister, is it my younger brother that I gave birth to this time? She hopes her mother has a younger brother. Everyone else's family has boys, but their family only has 3 girls. She once heard her father tell her mother that the villagers looked down on him and said he was a penniless household without a son. Dad was very disappointed when he said this, and Mom even cried. She doesn't want her parents to be upset, so she hopes her mother will give birth to a younger brother this time, so that both parents will be happy. Xiaohua stuffed her little sister into the second child's bed and helped them tuck in the corners of the bed, touching the second child's head. "Don't worry, Xiaomei must be a younger brother this time," said Aunt Ma next door. "My mother has a sharp belly in this pregnancy, so she must be a boy." "It must be a boy, this family needs a boy too much to support the door." The third person saw that the elder sister had not yet climbed onto the Kong, so he reached out a hand and pulled the elder sister's sleeve, saying, "Sister, come up." De Hua touched Xiao San's head again and whispered, "You guys go to bed first, I'll go see Mom." Xiao Mei looked up at the big flower and said, "We can't go in if our mother gives birth. She is 6 years old this year and knows that women have children, and children cannot go in." She vaguely remembers 3 years ago when her mother gave birth to a younger sister, she cried and wanted to go in to find her mother. Her father took her out of the room and slapped her hard on the buttocks. What did Dad say at that time? "By the way, if you don't listen, you will become a fool in the east of the village." She knew that the fool in her father's mouth was the male child of the Su family. She said she saw her mother give birth to a younger sister when she was 3 years old, but the next morning she became a fool. Now that the elder sister is going to see her mother and younger brother, won't she also become a fool? She doesn't want her older sister to become a fool. De Hua pulled out the light cord and walked outside, saying, "I came out when my mother started giving birth. You and your sister should sleep first, don't push the blanket. Otherwise, you'll have to take medicine if you catch a cold." Xiao Mei pulled her sister's hand outside the blanket into the blanket and said, "Sister, I know now. I will keep an eye on her. Come back quickly." De Hua went out, and the youngest Xiao Fang nestled in the bed. She asked Xiao Mei in a muffled voice, "Second sister, Mom will be okay, right?" Xiao Mei reached out and hugged her younger sister, gently patting her back. "Mom's okay, Mom's giving birth to a little brother for us," she said. She worked hard to drive Su Chongsheng away from her mind. Su Chongsheng is Su Fool. His mother bled to death while giving birth to his sister. Poor Su Xiuxiu was born without a mother, and her brother became a fool. Mother will be fine, definitely not. De Hua walked into the kitchen, opened the cabinet under the cutting board, and took out the white plastic bag in the corner of the cabinet. One corner of the plastic bag is filled with something, tightly tied with a thin rope. She untied the rope tied to the plastic bag and carefully opened it. The brown sugar inside the plastic bag was exposed. She took out a bowl and placed it on the chopping board. With 3 fingers inserted into a plastic bag, she took out a pinch of brown sugar and put it into the bowl. Seeing that the brown sugar did not cover the bottom of the bowl, she took out another pinch and put it into the bowl. Now, the bottom of the bowl was covered. Looking at the brown sugar in the bag that could still be consumed 4 or 5 times, De Hua swallowed her saliva. She picked up the rope on the side and tied the bag, then put it in the cabinet. Then she picked up the thermos from the chopping board, took off the cork, poured more than half of the bowl of boiling water into it, covered it with the cork, took out a pair of chopsticks, stirred it in the bowl until the brown sugar water melted, and carefully picked up the bowl and walked towards the west room. With a creak, the door opened. The woman on the Kong curled up and heard the sound of the door opening. She looked towards the door and saw that it was De Hua. She frowned and said, "De Hua, why come in? Go out quickly." The woman's voice is weak and anxious. De Hua closed the door and brought the bowl to the woman's side, saying, "Mom, you drink this bowl of brown sugar water, otherwise you won't have the strength to have a younger brother later." The woman was angry and reached out to push the big flower, saying, "You go out, go out." De Hua was pushed by the woman, and the brown sugar water in the bowl almost spilled out. She quickly supported the bowl in her hand with her other hand. Mom, you haven't given birth yet. It's okay for me to come in. You drink brown sugar water, and after drinking it, I'll go out. The woman saw that Dahua was stubborn, so she had to sit up with difficulty, took the bowl from her hand, drank the slightly hot brown sugar water in one gulp, and then stuffed the bowl into Dahua's arms. All right, I've finished drinking. You go out quickly. Your father and grandmother are coming soon, so you don't need to worry about it here. You keep an eye on the two little ones. What else did Dahua want to say? She was pushed and pushed by a woman to leave the con. Dahua had no choice but to take a bowl and go out. Closing the door, she returned to the kitchen, poured some boiling water into the bowl, rinsed it with chopsticks, picked up the bowl, and took a careful sip. A hint of sweetness melted in her mouth, making it delicious. Chapter 2. Born, a Girl. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Dahua washed the bowl in her hand, then picked up 2 bundles of firewood from the shed and entered the kitchen to start boiling water. She has 2 younger sisters who know that they need hot water when they grow up and have children. The stove is as tall as the chopping board. She is only 8 years old and can barely reach the thermos on the chopping board by pouring a bowl of water, but she cannot take off the pot on the stove. But it didn't make it difficult for her either. She brought a small stool and placed it in front of the stove, then stood up so that the lid of the pot could be lifted. Then she got off the stool and walked to the water tank. She picked up a water spoon and scooped half a spoonful of water from the tank. With both hands gripping the handle of the spoon, she trembled and walked to the stove. She carefully stood on the bench and poured the water from the spoon into the pot. After going back and forth more than 10 times, the water in the pot is finally almost full. She used tongs to pull the stove from the stove and saw that the fire left at night was still there, so she added some firewood to the stove. The firewood was quickly ignited by the fire. At this moment, the sound of speaking came from the door. Her father came with his grandmother and aunt. She walked to the kitchen door and saw her father holding a bundle of wheat straw, her aunt holding 2 eggs in her hand, her grandmother holding scissors, cloth sheets, and other things, and hurriedly entering the yard with 2 urea bags under her armpits. Her father and grandmother didn't have time to speak and hurriedly entered the western room, while her aunt walked towards the kitchen. Seeing the big flower at the door, my aunt walked inside and said to her, "Big flower, go and bring some firewood in. I'll beat 2 eggs for your mother first, and then boil some hot water for later use." Dahua breathed a sigh of relief when she saw her father returning with her grandmother. "Auntie, I have already boiled the water." Aunt Hua couldn't help but praise the stove as it was boiling water, saying, "Dahua is really putting in a lot of effort. She knew that my mother and younger brother needed hot water, and it had already been cooked. I'll beat an egg for your mother now. She has nothing in her stomach and lacks strength when giving birth to her younger brother." Dahua shyly lowered her head when she heard her aunt's praise. She remained silent and pulled out 2 burning firewood from the burning stove, placing it in the smaller empty stove next to her. There is only 1 pot at home, boiling water on the large stove. Her aunt took out an iron basin and placed it on the small stove, adding a spoonful of water to it. After the firewood in the small stove burned brightly, Dahua added 2 more sticks to it. The western room emitted waves of painful moans, and Dahua sat on a stool, adding firewood to the stove, occasionally glancing at the western room. Her aunt felt relieved and said, "Don't worry, big flower. Your mother will be fine." Dahua withdrew her gaze and let out a soft The water in the basin quickly boiled. Her aunt picked up an egg and knocked it against the edge of the basin, causing the eggshell to crack. With her 2 thumbs, she broke the crack and the egg liquid flowed into the basin. Dahua watched as the transparent egg white in the pot slowly turned white, with a layer of foam floating around the egg. Her aunt picked up a spoon and skimmed off the foam. After waiting for a few minutes, she put the bowl on the chopping board, picked up the bowl on the chopping board, poured both eggs into the bowl, and scooped a spoonful of soup into the bowl. Seeing that there was still some soup in the bowl, she sprinkled a little salt and took out another bowl. She poured the remaining soup into the bowl and said to Dahua, "Dahua, you can drink this leftover soup." After that, she picked up the bowl with eggs and left the kitchen. Dahua looked at most of the bowl of egg soup and took a small sip. It tasted like an egg, salty and delicious. She picked up her bowl and walked towards the middle house. Entering the room, turning on the lights, I saw two little radish heads staring at me with big eyes open. She placed the bowl on the edge of the Kong, picked up Xiaofang from the bed, and placed her on the Kong. Xiao Mei also got up from the bed. Dahua held the bowl to Xiaofang's mouth, fed her soup, and asked Xiao Mei, "Why haven't you slept?" Xiao Mei looked at the soup bowl and swallowed the drain, saying, "Mom has a stomachache and can't sleep." Dahua didn't say anything more. When she saw Xiaofang drinking halfway, she handed the bowl to Xiao Mei and said, "Serve it, drink slowly." Xiao Mei happily took the bowl and took a sip. Then he handed the bowl to Dahua and said, "Sister, drink too." Dahua didn't take it, so she wiped off the soup from the corner of Xiaofang's mouth and said, "I've had it in the kitchen before, you can drink it." Xiao Mei just picked up the soup from the bowl. Xiaofang looked greedily at second sister drinking soup. That gaze was too passionate. Xiao Mei saw her wet big eyes looking at her, so she had to bring the bowl to her sister's mouth and feed the last bit of soup from the bowl to Xiaofang. The three sisters sat on the Kong and listened to a painful wail coming from the next room. "Sister, is your mother okay?" Dahua held the two little ones in her arms, looked at the wall with her eyes, and whispered, "It's okay, don't worry." On the other side of the wall, their mother is giving birth to little brothers for them. After an unknown amount of time, the moans of the western room had turned into hoarse growls, mixed with the sound of grandma shouting, "Force," causing Xiaofang to burst into tears in shock. Dahua covered Xiaofang's ears with both hands and gestured for Xiao Mei to cover her ears herself. Xiao Mei lifted her hands and tightly covered her ears, tears accumulating in her eyes that couldn't be shed. She looked at her sister in terror. Outside the west room, their father raised his hand to wipe off the sweat from their faces and anxiously walked around the door. He listened more and more anxiously to his mother-in-law's words, "Force," in the room, but his wife's shout gradually lowered, making his heart skip a beat. He knew that this did not mean that his wife was no longer in pain, on the contrary, she was already in pain to the point where she was powerless. "This is the most dangerous thing, if you're not careful," he hurriedly shouted outside the door, "Shulan, Shulan, are you okay? Hold on, Shulan." In the room, the old man looked at his daughter with tearful eyes and said, "Shulan, exert yourself. The child is coming out soon, you have to hold on." The woman lying on the straw weakly said, "Mom, I don't have the strength anymore." Although she had already eaten the eggs brought by her sister-in-law, her body, which had been losing money for a long time, still had no strength to give birth to the child. Li Lanhua wiped off the sweat from her sister-in-law's face and said, "Shulan, think about those 3 female dolls. If you just go like this, then the 3 of them will have no mother. What kind of life do you think the Su family's childless child is living? Do you want the 3 of them to become like that too? Besides, your baby must have a sharp belly. Your family has been looking forward to him for so long. Now that the baby is coming, are you sure you want to give up?" Dahua sat on the Kong with her 2 younger sisters in her arms, staring blankly at the wall in front of her. "My mother's voice is getting quieter and I can't hear it anymore." The 2 younger sisters stopped shouting when they saw their mother and happily put down their hands. Xiaofang leaned against her elder sister and looked up at her, "Sister, mother, don't cry." Xiao Mei also said happily, "Sister, may I not feel the pain anymore?" Dahua hugged the 2 tightly and remained silent. "Wow wow!" A loud shout followed closely by a faint cry of a baby, which came to everyone's ears first and then. Immediately after, the surprised voice of the child's aunt came. "Born, born." Dahua let go of her 2 younger sisters and began to cry softly. Outside the west room, the child's father anxiously said, "Sister-in-law, has Xulon given birth?" "You open the door, I'll take a look at his mother and child." At this moment, there was no sound inside. After a while, the door creaked open, and Li Lanhua stood at the door holding the child wrapped in brie, looking at the happy man outside the door and not knowing what to say. "Sister-in-law, is Xulon okay? Where's the child? Is it a boy?" Li Lanhua held the child and said helplessly, "Xulon is fine, and the child is also healthy." "She is a girl." Chapter 3. How about? Give it away. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The man was stunned when he heard this and said, "Sister-in-law, isn't it a man? Why is she a girl?" Li Lanhua was holding the child, which was also difficult to understand. Even though Xulon had a sharp belly, how could she be born as a daughter? She pondered and said, "Zhengjun, you are still young. Don't be discouraged, there will always be boys. Now that Xulon has just given birth, she, like you, hopes that this baby will be a boy. Unfortunately, fate has not met her wishes. She is even more uncomfortable than you. You can't be angry at this time." Lu Xingjun said hesitantly, "Sister-in-law, I know. Anyway, Xufan has given birth to a child for me, and I know her hard work. Don't worry, I won't lose my temper. Show me the child." Li Lanhua saw that Lu Xingjun's emotions were relatively stable, so she handed over the child in her arms. Seeing that Lu Xingjun had just taken over the child and was staring blankly without any extreme behavior, she finally felt relieved. The child may not be comfortable staying in Lu Xingjun's arms, and soon she started crying loudly. Lu Xingjun had no choice but to enter the house and take the child to Zhao Xulon's side. De Hua comforted the two little ones to sleep and just came out of the room to see her father and aunt carrying a urea bag alone from the west room. The four corners of the urea bag were held in hand, with some wheat straw piled up on the bag. There was a lot of blood sticking to the wheat straw, staining most of it red. More blood was trapped in the middle of the urea bag. Blood seeped through the bag, dripping down one by one. De Hua saw the two of them coming out and asked, "Dad, is Mom okay?" Lu Xingjun walked out with his bag in hand and said as he walked, "All right, you go sleep. I'll go in and see your mother tomorrow morning." De Hua looked at the two people walking out of the courtyard and didn't ask if their mother gave birth to a younger brother or sister. She turned around and returned to the room, got into bed and closed her eyes. In the western room, the old lady sat on the edge of the Kong, wiped away the tears from her daughter's eyes, and whispered, "My son, you need to be more open-minded. Although you still have a daughter this time, you too are still young and can still have children. There will always be a time when you have a son." Zhao Xulon lay weakly on the Kong, tears streaming down upon hearing her mother's words. She sobbed and said, "Mother, this baby has already been born beyond the limit, how can we still give birth to one? We can't afford the fine from the government. You said your belly is so sharp, why is it just a girl?" When she first conceived this baby, she and Lao Lu were thinking about getting rid of it, but it was during the busy farming season and they couldn't afford to go to the commune. When the busy farming season ended and the two of them were preparing to go to the hospital, they realized that this baby had a sharp belly and looked like a male child. The two had been hoping for their son for a long time, but when they saw that God had given them a son, they risked being discovered by the family planning team and decided to keep the child. After hiding for half a year, she finally gave birth to a child and ended up being a daughter again. As an outsider, Zheng Jun was not well received in the village. Now that he has 4 daughters, he may not even be able to lift his head. The old lady naturally knows the consequences of being discovered by the public for having her daughter give birth, but it is not possible for her family not to have a boy standing at the door. She looked at the sweet child sleeping in her daughter's arms and hesitated for a moment before saying, "How about? Give this girl away. This way, if you want another son in the future, even if you pay a fine, you will pay less." Zhao Shulan looked at her little daughter, who was still smacking her lips while sleeping in her arms, and a struggle flashed in her eyes. She caressed her little daughter's face for a long time, then gently shook her head and said, "Mother, the baby is still so young. I don't know how much I will suffer if I send it out. My fate should be like this, I admit it." After listening to her daughter's words, the old lady began to burst into tears. She raised her hand and wiped her face, sniffed and choked, saying, "My son, why is your life so hard? Oh my God, why can't you give my son a son? My son and I never do anything wrong, so why can't you pity these two people? My poor son. Law can't stand up straight now." Upon hearing his mother. Law's words outside the door, Liu Xingjun withdrew his hand, which was about to open the door. He silently turned around and sat on the bench in the yard, staring at the bean sprouts in the vegetable field, lost in thought. Liu Xingjun moved from the mainland 10 years ago. When he arrived, his family of 3 had not yet settled down in the village, and his elderly parents passed away one after another. After burying his parents, Liu Xingjun began living alone. At that time, he had no land and spent his days searching for work in surrounding villages and communes. Although the village did not allocate land, the homestead to live in still needs to be allocated. Coincidentally, an elderly person living alone in the village passed away, so his 3 small dilapidated houses were allocated to Liu Xingjun. Although most of the older generation in the village migrated from the mainland in the past 5 years, the younger generation are the local residents of Daqian village. The young men were not very convinced when they saw the village chief transferring the property belonging to the village to an outsider. They had no choice but to be the village branch secretary, so they faced difficulties with Liu Xingjun everywhere. 10 years ago, Liu Xingjun did not live well in the village. He went out to work during the day, and when he returned at night, he often saw that either the door latch was broken or the window paper was punctured. He knew it was a young man in the village who was younger or even the same age as him who did it, but he had no good choice but to fix the broken door bolt and boil some paste to tightly paste the broken window paper. After a year, Liu Xingjun still set out early and returned late, searching for work everywhere. Zhao Shulan's father saw that this young man was down to earth and hardworking, so he took the initiative to marry his youngest daughter to Liu Xingjun, who had not even built a house at the time. Liu Xingjun is indeed capable. After marrying Zhao Shulan, he still works odd jobs everywhere every day to earn money. In the 2nd year after marriage, Dahua was born, and Liu Xingjun worked even harder. No matter what dirty or tiring work he did, as long as he could earn money, he would do it. In less than 3 years, he had saved enough money to build a house. The couple decided to demolish and rebuild these 3 small dilapidated houses. Unfortunately, fate played tricks on people. Just as the couple was preparing for a new house, a thief broke into their house. The money that the 2 of them had worked hard to save for 3 or 4 years was sold in one pot. The hearts of the young couple cooled halfway. What should we do? Alarm. The police arrived, investigated around, and then said to wait for notification before leaving. This wait lasted for a month, and the thief who stole the money was caught, but the thief had already spent all the money. The parents of the thief are also generous and would rather have their son go to jail than repay him. So the thief who stole the money was caught and sent to prison, and the couple's money couldn't be found. Liu Xingjun, who is already the father of 2 children, can only continue to work part-time to save money. But with the birth of his 2nd child, the family's expenses also increased, and he saved up for several years but couldn't save enough money to build a new house again. After the 3rd child is born, the family's expenses have increased, making it difficult to make a living, let alone to build a new house. So, 10 years have passed, and a family of 5 still live in these 3 old dilapidated small houses. Now that the 4th child is born, in addition to the family's food, clothing, and daily necessities, they also have to pay a fine, making it even more difficult for the family to make a living. Chapter 4. I'm not old yet. You are listening at novel full.audio. When Li Lanhua walked into the yard, she saw Lu Xingjun staring absent-mindedly at the vegetable field. Although the moon is round tonight, what is there to see in the vegetable garden? She knew the person was feeling uncomfortable, but she still spoke up and said, Xingjun, I ordered 2 bowls of noodles, and you and Shulan have been tinkering around for half the night. Come in and have some. Previously, Li Lanhua and Lu Xingjun brought the urea bags and wheat straw that Zhao Shulan had used outside and buried them in a shady place. Later, when Lu Xingjun returned, she went back to her own home and cooked a bowl of noodles for the 2 of them. Upon hearing the sound, Lu Xingjun stood up and took the bowl from Li Lanhua's hand. He said, Thank you, sister.in.law. He then carried the bowl and walked towards the western room. Li Lanhua quickly took a few steps to open the door, and when Lu Xingjun entered, she also flashed into the room and quickly closed the door. At this moment, both the mother and daughter in the room had stopped crying and were speechless. When they came in, the old lady asked Lu Xingjun, Xingjun, have those filths been buried? Lu Xingjun placed a bowl of noodles on the wooden cabinet at the head of the Kong and said, Mom, it's all buried. Sister-in-law brought 2 bowls of noodles over for you and Shulan to eat. He handed the old lady another bowl of rice. Li Lanhua saw this and quickly said, Xingjun, you and Shulan can eat these 2 bowls of rice. I'll keep my mother's portion and let's go back to eat. The old lady gave her daughter-in-law a approving glance, got up and got off the Kong. While putting on her shoes, she said to Lu Xingjun, Xingjun, you've been busy for half the night too. Hurry up and have some food. Your sister.in.law and I will go back tonight and come back tomorrow. After speaking, he said to Zhao Shulan lying on the Kong, Shulan, you also have some to eat. After finishing, have a good sleep and don't think about anything, you know. Zhao Shulan nodded and said to Li Lanhua, sister-in-law, thank you. Li Lanhua waved her hand and said, Hi, our family doesn't say thank you or not. You eat well, then sleep peacefully. I'll come see you with my mother tomorrow. She then helped the old lady leave. Upon seeing this, Lu Xingjun put down his bowl and escorted the 2 of them out of the door. When I returned to my room, I saw Zhao Shulan wiping away her tears. He picked up the towel hanging on the wall, wiped away the tears from Zhao Shulan's face, and then helped her sit down. He handed Zhao Shulan a bowl from the wooden cabinet and said, the noodles sent by sister.in.law, please have some. Zhao Shulan just kept wiping away her tears but didn't take the bowl. He sighed and took her hand, placing the bowl in her hand. Don't cry, be careful not to cry during the postpartum period and damage your eyes. Anyway, you have to eat some, otherwise tomorrow there will be no milk, and the baby will be hungry. Upon hearing this, Zhao Shulan glanced at her sleeping little daughter and then picked up the chopsticks from the bowl, picked out a chopstick and put it into her mouth. When Lu Xingjun saw Zhao Shulan starting to eat, he also picked up the bowl from the wooden cabinet and sat on the edge of the Kong, silently eating. After finishing a bowl of noodles, Zhao Shulan placed the bowl on the cabinet and hesitated for a moment before saying, Old C. Should I pay a fine? Lu Xingjun put down his dishes and nodded silently. How much do you need to pay? Ma Laoxi's youngest son, Chaosheng, paid 800 yuan. Zhao Shulan murmured, 800, where are we going to raise funds? She remembered what her mother had said before and nervously said, today, my mother said she could give away the 4th son. As she spoke, she looked at Lu Xingjun's face. Lu Xingjun frowned and said, no, how can I raise my own baby for others? I'm not old yet, why can't I afford to raise a little baby? Zhao Shulan finally let go of her hanging heart when she saw Lu Xingjun say so. She whispered, that's what I think too. My child is so young, we can't do without our parents. Lu Xingjun nodded and picked up the bowl from the wooden cabinet, saying to Zhao Shulan, don't think too much. Sleep for a while, I'll go wash the bowl. Zhao Shulan responded and slowly lay down. Liu Xu saw her lying down and went out with a bowl in hand. After washing his dishes, Liu Xu returned to his room and carefully lay down next to Zhao Shulan. Before Zhao Shulan gave birth, the old lady rolled up half of the wool felt on the Kong, and the wheat straw at the bottom of the Kong was also gathered to the side. The empty Kong was covered with urea bags and wheat straw. Zhao Shulan gave birth to a child on the straw covered with urea bags. After the child was born, she removed the urea bags and the blood-stained straw, and then laid the previous straw and wool felt on the Kong, restoring it to its original shape. So Liu Xu didn't get crowded after lying down. He turned to look at his sleeping little daughter, his eyes filled with helplessness. The little one didn't know what he had dreamed of. He first smacked his mouth twice, then grinned with a wide grin. A faint smile appeared in Liu Xingjuan's eyes and he turned off the light. In the darkness, Zhao Shulan whispered to Liu Xingjun, "What should I do with my child's fine?" Liu Xingjun tucked in Zhao Shulan's corner and said, "Don't worry, I'll figure out a way tomorrow and go to sleep." Zhao Shulan hummed and fell into a deep sleep. Liu Xingjun listened to the sound of two breaths, one big and one small, beside him, and his melancholy surged in his heart. Starting from 1952, in response to the national policy of supporting the border areas, some people traveled across mountains and rivers to participate in production and construction in northwest China. His parents also wanted to respond to the national call and participate in border defense. However, their grandparents did not agree to let their children suffer in northwest China, which delayed the process. His family had 2 generations of singles. His grandfather had no brothers and sisters, and he had only one child, his father. He saw more than his eyes. Naturally, children were not allowed to go to the northwest to open up wasteland. His parents were also aware of the old man's concerns, so they dispelled the idea of going to the northwest. Until 1983, when his grandparents passed away one after another, no one could resist his parents' idea of going north. So, the family packed up their belongings and boarded the green car heading north. That year, he was only 19 years old and, like his parents, longed for a magnificent career in the northwest. However, the wind and sand in the northwest are too strong, which not only cools the hot hearts of the family, but also the lives of parents. As soon as the family was about to take root in Daqian village, their parents who were not accustomed to the northwest climate fell ill one after another. Taking medicine and seeking medical treatment depleted the family's savings, but the illness worsened. Not long after, their parents passed away one after another. He wanted to take his parents back to his hometown for burial, but he was penniless and could not afford a train ticket. He had to bury his parents in Daqian village, thousands of kilometers away from his hometown. Since then, he has no relatives in the world and can only live alone. At that time, he had not yet been allocated land, so he ran around the village all day to do some work. Although life was hard, he could still survive. The young people in the village, although making things difficult for themselves and always causing trouble, did not do anything that would harm their finances or lives. Later, I couldn't bear to fight with a few young men, so those people stopped bothering me. Life is very difficult, but on the day my father.in.law promised him his daughter, he felt that life had a new beginning. He still remembers the joyful mood of the couple when the eldest was born. After having a daughter, he never let himself idle for a day and worked hard to earn money, just to let his wife and daughter live in a bright house. Fate is deceiving people. In the second year after giving birth to their second child, the commune redistributed the land, and the 4 of them were given 12 acres of land. At last, their family's life was better. But with the birth of the 3rd child, life at home has become difficult again. The 3rd child is a premature baby, born with poor health and falling ill every once in a while. It costs money to get vaccinated and take medication. After 2 years, the little money that the family has just saved is gone. Fortunately, over the past year, Lao San's health has gradually improved and he has gone to the hospital much less frequently. After paying off the foreign debt he owed for the past 2 years, he also saved up dozens of yuan. But now that my fourth child is born, I have to pay a fine of 800 yuan. Where should I borrow this money? I'm really worried about myself. Chapter 5. A bowl of egg soup. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The next morning, before dawn, Liu Xu got up and went to water the field today. It's his turn to water his house at 7 o'clock in the morning, and he has to go there early to wait for the water to be changed. At 7 o'clock in the afternoon, regardless of whether the water is poured or not, this water will have to be transferred to another household. Zhao Shulan was awakened by the sound of Liu Xu waking up, and she said in a daze, "Her father, why did you wake up so early?" Liu Xu replied while putting on his clothes, "It's our turn to water the field today. I'll go over early and change the water. I'll cook some porridge for you, you can eat it later," Zhao Shulan said, getting up and preparing to cook. However, a sharp pain came from her body, and she snorted and collapsed on the kong. Liu Xu covered her with a blanket and said, "Don't move around, rest assured during the confinement period, I'll just eat whatever I want myself." Zhao Shulan didn't show off, so she lay back and said, "There are steamed buns in the kitchen steamer. You can eat two with hot water before going." Liu Xu nodded and got dressed before going out. De Hua opened the door of the western room and stood at the door, looking at the people on the kong. Zhao Shulan saw her standing there and didn't come over, so she asked, "De Hua, why are you standing at the door? Come in." De Hua saw his mother's calm tone and slowly walked to the edge of the kong. She already knew that her mother had given birth to a younger sister. The sound insulation of rural houses is poor. She heard all the things my grandmother said in the west room last night. Father and mother are looking forward to having a son, but they don't know how sad it is to have a daughter. She hesitated at the door because she wanted to see what her sister looked like and was afraid of seeing her mother's sad expression. She looked at the small body lying quietly on the inner side of the kong, frowning in disgust. "Why is my younger sister so ugly? She looks wrinkled and red like a little monkey, completely incomparable to the second and third." Zhao Shulan smiled and said, "My younger sister has just been born and hasn't grown yet. Just wait a few days until she grows." De Hua doubted the authenticity of his mother's words and probed, "Will she be like Rainbow sister?" "Rainbow is my uncle's daughter, who is already 1 year old. She is white, tender, and particularly cute. Sister is so ugly, can she grow into the appearance of Rainbow sister?" Zhao Shulan raised her hand to wipe away the saliva from the corner of her little daughter's mouth and nodded, "It will look as beautiful as a rainbow." De Hua breathed a sigh of relief in secret. She lay on the edge of the kong and gently poked her sister's face with her fingers. When she saw that the little baby didn't react, she poked her again. The baby continued to sleep with 2 unhappy groans. De Hua withdrew her hand in satisfaction and asked Zhao Shulan, "Mom, what do you want to eat? I'll go make it for you." She is only 8 years old and can't cook complicated pasta, but she can cook congee or something. Before giving birth to a younger sister, it was always my mother who was cooking. Now that my mother can't get off the kong, and my father is busy with household matters, she has to take good care of the whole family. Zhao Shulan can't rest assured that she cooks. Although children in rural areas start early at home, they still have to wait until they can get a chopping board and knead noodles on it. De Hua is only 8 years old, and although she can stand on a chopping board, it is not very effective for kneading noodles on it. Of course, there are also people who ask a 7 or 8-year-old girl to step on a stool, knead noodles, and cook, but Zhao Shulan cannot bear it. If she falls off due to instability, not only will she suffer, but she will also spend money to go to the hospital. Take 2 steamed buns for your mother, and bring over a bowl of boiling water. There are pickled chives in the pickled vegetable tank, take some out, and when Xiaomei and Xiaofang wake up, you can eat them with the steamed buns. Upon hearing this, De Hua realized that she was going to eat steamed buns and soak them in water. Most of the ingredients in wawatu are corn flour, which is not as nutritious as rice and wheat. She knew that pregnant women should eat well during the confinement period, and her mother's doing so was not good for her health. So she said, "Mom, I'll cook some rice soup for you." Zhao Shulan didn't know that yesterday's water was cooked by Dehua. She said, "Where can you take that big iron pot?" "Mom, just eat some steamed buns." Dehua was about to say that she could cook rice soup without moving the iron pot when the door creaked open. Li Lanhua's voice came from the courtyard, "Shulan, are you awake? My mother and I brought you some breakfast." Dehua heard the sound and ran out the door. She saw her aunt holding a bowl of egg soup and 2 yubing, deep-fried round and flat dough cake. Grandma stood at the door with a cloth bag. She opened the door wide and whispered, "Grandma and Aunt, come in quickly. My mother is already awake, but my sister is still sleeping." The two of them saw Dehua coming out of the west room and knew that Lu Jingjun had already woken up, so they entered the west room first and then later. Zhao Shulan struggled to sit up when she saw her mother and sister.In.Law coming. Dehua helped Zhao Shulan up, picked up a pillow and stood it on the wall, letting her lean against it. Zhao Shulan leaned against the pillow and moved her body downwards, trying to alleviate the pain in her lower body. She looked at the two of them and said, "Mom, sister.In.Law, why did you come so early? This is too delaying." Li Lanhua put a yubing, deep-fried round and flat dough cake, on the wooden box cover and handed her the egg soup and another yubing, deep-fried round and flat dough cake. "It's late. You haven't had breakfast yet. There's nothing good at home. I made an egg soup and fried 2 yubing, deep-fried round and flat dough cake. You should eat your breakfast first." Zhao Shulan took the bowl and said, "I'm causing trouble for my sister.In.Law." Li Lanhua pretended to be angry and said, "Why are you being polite to me? When I gave birth to Shaoshan and Rainbow, it was you and your mother who took care of it. Now that you gave birth, I'll bring you a bowl of egg soup. If there's any trouble, don't worry. By the way, my mother brought you a few eggs, and you asked the main army to cook one for you every day. The difficulty of giving birth to you needs to be well replenished. My mother killed an old hen and stewed it for you this morning. I brought it to you before noon. You can drink some chicken soup, eat some meat, and milk it." Zhao Shulan whispered, "Okay." She didn't say anything thank you, but she kept in mind the kindness her mother and sister.In.Law treated her. In the future, she will repay them with actions. No matter how much she thanks now, it will be empty. The old lady handed the bag in her hand to Dehua and instructed, "Dehua, put these eggs away and make them for your mother to eat later." Dehua took the cloth bag and carried it to the kitchen. Zhao Shulan asked the two of them to sit on the kong. The old lady took off her shoes and sat on the edge of the kong, while Li Lanhua moved a chair and sat on the wall. She saw Zhao Shulan holding a bowl all the time and said, "You hurry up and eat. The soup hasn't been too hot since we came all the way. If you wait a little longer and the soup completely cools down, you'll have to heat it up again." Zhao Shulan saw her sister.In.Law staring at her and knew she couldn't keep this bowl of soup for the children, so she had to eat it one bite at a time. The old lady saw that Lu Jingjun was not around and asked Zhao Shulan where he had gone. She knew that he had gone to the field to water and didn't say anything more. After Zhao Shulan finished eating the yubing, deep-fried round and flat dough cake, in her hand and the soup in the bowl bottomed out, the three people chatted again. The old lady and Li Lanhua got up and prepared to go back. Before leaving, Li Lanhua pointed to another yubing, deep-fried round and flat dough cake, on the wooden box cover and said, "Shulan, you ate this cake together when you had soup at noon." Zhao Shulan nodded in response. Chapter 6. Disputes over water improvement. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Dehua put the eggs on the chopping board, then took out a bowl and picked up some pickled chives and placed them on the table. She also took out 3 steamed buns from the steamer and put them away. She went to the middle house and asked the two little ones to wake up, wash their faces, and eat. On the other side, Liu Xingjun went to the ground and saw that water was being released in the neighboring area, and there was no one guarding the ground. He squatted on the ground waiting for time. After a while, it was time to water himself, but the people from the neighboring Li family did not come to block the water outlet. He got up and picked up the shovel, and sizzled twice to change the water to his own land. Then he opened the 2 urea bags he carried with him, filled them with more than half of the bags of soil, tied them, picked them up and threw them to the water inlet of the next floor. This one, the water that was originally flowing on both sides, splashed into my own land. Seeing that the water had improved in the field, he picked up the shovel and prepared to go into the field to watch the water, so as to ensure that the water could flow to each row of corn. At this moment, a man in his 30s rode his bicycle to the ground. When he saw that Liu Xingjun had changed the water, he swore with a bicycle. "Good Liu Xingjun, I haven't finished watering my house yet, and you his mother changed the water to your house secretly. You are so ungrateful." He was about to come over and move the urea bag away. Liu Xingjun blocked his hand as he was about to move the bag and said displeasedly, "Li Hailong, your water was poured from 7 o'clock last night to 7 o'clock this morning. Can you see what time it is now? I don't care what time it is for you. The water in my field hasn't been poured out yet, and there are several places where it hasn't been poured. Give me another hour, and after I finish pouring, I'll change the water to your field." He fell asleep on the edge of the ground while watering last night, and only this morning did he wake up to find several slightly higher areas that had not been watered. He hurriedly went into the ground to drain the water, but before he could even water 2 pieces of land, the water flow decreased significantly. He couldn't bring the water to a higher place anymore. And he still has 3 slightly higher areas that have not been watered. If he misses this watering opportunity, he will have to wait for more than a month from now. By then, his potato seedlings that were not watered will probably have dried up. It is impossible for Liu Xingjun to change the water to him again. Our 2 families' land is the same size. If I change the water to you, my corn field will not be fully watered. It was your own carelessness that caused your field to not be filled with water. Who can blame this? If this water is changed to Li Hailong today, don't try to change it back in less than 3 hours. His home has the same terrain as his own, with 4 or 5 small slopes that are higher than the surrounding terrain. These areas require people to dig shallow ditches to divert water. The water in Li Haijun's home has stopped flowing. When the water flows through a few hundred meters to reach the slope, and then Li Haijun digs a shallow ditch to divert the water onto the slope, the water will penetrate the entire slope, which will take 2 to 3 hours. If this delay occurs, his own subway will not be able to be fully irrigated. Seeing that Liu Xingjun was unwilling to change the water to himself, Li Hailong said, "Why are you such a man? The crops in my field can't be watered, and Miao will die. I will soon water them and change your ways, won't it be over?" "What the hell are you talking about?" Liu Xingjun was also angry at this moment. He inserted a shovel into the canal and said angrily, "Your Miao is a Miao, but my Miao is not a Miao. Your Miao will die if you don't water it, and my Miao will live if you don't water it. I said I'll use it for an hour, and after pouring it, I'll change the water back for you. You chatter around like a woman." Liu Xingjun laughed angrily and said, "Both of us have 12 hours of watering time. If you use an extra hour, I will have to lose 1 hour. Are you asking me if I need water?" Of course, Li Hailong knew that if he used an extra hour, Liu Xingjun might not be able to finish watering the land, but as the saying goes, a friend who dies will not die a poor person. He should first finish watering his own land and others' land. What does it have to do with him? He saw that Liu Xingjun was determined not to change his water, so he bypassed Liu Xingjun, crossed his legs on both sides of the canal, and prepared to move the urea bag away. Liu Xingjun was really angry now. He grabbed the hand that Li Hailong reached into the bag and pushed it back. Li Hailong fell into the ditch with a splash. He jumped up in the water, wiped the mud off his face with his hands, and angrily said, "I'll fuck your uncle's Liu Xu, and I'll kill you." Then he mentioned the shovel on one side and chopped at Liu Xu. Liu Xu dodged the head of the shovel, reached for the handle of the shovel, lifted his foot and kicked him into the ditch again. Liu Xu is 1.8 meters tall. Although he is relatively thin, he has a lot of strength on his body after running around in recent years. On the other hand, Li Hailong, who is about 1.75 meters tall and thin like a monkey, really competes with Liu Xu, but it is still him who suffers losses. Li Hailong climbed out of the canal again, lifted his hand to wipe the water off his face, and spat at Liu Xu. "Fuck me, I see if you can go home today. If you have the ability, don't go back all day, or I will change the water as soon as you leave." Then he picked up his shovel, pushed it onto his bike, walked to the shade of a tree nearby, and sat down. Liu Xu was too lazy to pay attention to him, as he watched the water flow through corn stalks and seep into the ground. He used a shovel to draw a ditch where the terrain was slightly higher and the water could not go up. This is a slow job, he takes it extra seriously, striving to ensure that every corn cob is soaked in water before moving on to the next high ground area. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the corn fields had already been watered halfway. Liu Xu raised his hand to wipe off the sweat that had flowed to the corners of his eyes and continued to dig ditches to divert water. This year's weather is particularly hot. It has just entered June, but the temperature remains high. People who are always hot at night want to put on blankets, let alone at noon. Li Haijun sat under the shade of a tree, reaching out and constantly fanning himself. This damn weather, sitting under the shade of a tree and still so hot, this damn mosquito occasionally bites itself, it's really uncomfortable. He looked at Liu Xu, who was burying his head digging a ditch in the center of the ground, and cursed, "How can this animal endure so long? If it doesn't rest at noon, it's not afraid of being sunburned to death." He changed his position and lay under the shade of a tree. He will fight against Liu Xu today, and he wants to see how long Liu Xu can endure. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Li Hailong squinted for a while and woke up to see that Liu Xu was still busy in the field. On the other end of the ground, a little girl carrying something walked towards Liu Xu. He recognized that it was Liu Xingjuan's eldest daughter. Damn it! He rolled up, clamped the shovel on the back seat of the bike and rode away. Damn it, Liu Xingjuan didn't say that someone was delivering food at noon, which caused him to feed mosquitoes on the ground for several hours. When Liu Xingjuan saw Dehua coming, he took a shovel to the edge of the ground and asked, "Why are you here?" "Your mother is fine." Dehua handed him the basket in his hand and said, "Mom, it's okay. Grandma brought stewed chicken over, and Mom asked me to bring you lunch." Liu Xingjuan took the basket, sat on the ground and uncovered the cloth on the basket. He saw that there was an enamel jar, a yubing, deep fried round and flat dough cake, and 2 wobbles in the basket. He lifted the lid of the enamel jar and found 2 chicken legs in a teapot of chicken soup. "Your grandmother cooked chicken for your mother, why did she bring me all the meat?" he said and took out a chicken leg and handed it to Dehua. "Here, you eat this chicken leg." Dehua shook her head and said, "Dad, I've tried it before." "You can eat it." Mom said, "You work hard and eat more. If you want to eat it, you can eat it. 2 big chicken legs, I can't finish it alone." He stuffed the chicken legs into Dehua's hand, took out the second chicken leg, and ate it in a big gulp. Dehua happily nibbled on the chicken legs in her hand. Chapter 7. Willow Catkins. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 8. Family Planning Group Visits. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Liu Xingjuan looked at the newly added page in his household registration book, and the big stone in his heart fell to the ground. He put his household registration book and receipt into his shirt pocket, rode his bicycle back. As we approached Dakian village, we saw an 8 or 9-year-old boy running in the distance. The young man was panting heavily, with a layer of fine sweat on his forehead. When he saw Liu Xu, he shouted, "Uncle, are you back? Hurry up. Back to the village." Liu Xu stopped his bicycle and asked, "Xiao Gang, what are you doing here? You're sweating profusely." Xiaojiang climbed onto the back seat of the car with all his might before gasping for breath, "Uncle, hurry home. The family planning team is here, they're going to take away their younger sister, and they even said they're going to catch their sister.In.Law." Liu Xingjun felt anxious and quickly rode towards the village on his bike. Xiaojiang, who was sitting in the back seat, almost fell off the car. He tightly hugged Liu Xingjun's waist to avoid intimate contact between his buttocks and the ground. As Liu Xingjun stepped on the pedal, he asked Xiaojiang, "Xiaojiang, when did you go home for family planning?" According to tradition, before the family planning policy goes down to the village Women's Federation will secretly tell families who have exceeded the limit to hide their children. Even if there is no time to inform, family planning is still being investigated from the village head, one by one. His house is located near the end of the village. The village has come to inspect it, and the villagers who see it will definitely rush to the house to notify. Shulan has enough time to hide the child, so how can she not be caught? It has been a while since my mother was chatting with my sister.In.Law, and suddenly the family planning officer came in. As soon as he came in, he wanted to take away his sister, and 2 people pulled my sister.In.Law down the Kong, saying they wanted to take her away for reform. My mother couldn't stop me, so she secretly asked me to go find my father first, and then go to the commune to find you. Liu Xingjun stepped on his bicycle and flew up to the village entrance. He saw a group of people pulling towards this side. He saw 2 men dragging Zhao Shulan towards the village entrance, her legs rubbing against the ground and struggling hard. A woman next to her was holding the 4th child in her arms. The 4th child's voice was hoarse when he cried, but the woman seemed to not hear him, not even comforting him. A little further away, Uncle was pinned to the ground by 2 men and couldn't move. He could only roar in the direction of Zhao Shulan. The child's grandmother collapsed in the arms of her sister.In.Law, her fingers trembling as she pointed at the group of people. The sister.In.Law helped the old man sit on the ground, giving her some comfort. Liu Xingjun only felt a wave of anger surge into his brain. He stopped the car and ran quickly for a few steps, then swung his fist and punched a man in the face. The man holding Zhao Shulan was unresponsive and fell to the ground with a punch. Another man saw this and threw Zhao Shulan down, cursing, "Fuck," and lifting his fist towards Liu Xingjun. Liu Xingjun dodged by mistake and kicked him over. The 2 people in the distance saw their own people being knocked down, left Zhao Jianjun behind, and ran towards this side. Zhao Shulan saw Liu Xingjun and climbed up to him, crying, "Xingjun, they want to take Xiaoxi away. They want to take Xiaoxi away." The woman holding Willow Catkins saw Liu Xingjun looking at her and her heart tightened. She stuttered and said, "This comrade, don't act recklessly. Hitting someone is illegal." Liu Xingjun remained calm and said, "Return the child." The woman saw Liu Xingjun's dark face and stumbling, unable to speak fluently. Your family has exceeded the birth limit, and the child needs to be handed over to the county. I'll say it again, return the child." Zhao Shulan got up from the ground, grabbed the child from the woman's embrace, and comforted her in her arms. The woman didn't dare to say anything, but both of them ran up to her now. Seeing his colleagues lying on the ground, one of them said angrily, "Who the hell are you? You dare to beat the public? Believe it or not, I will let you sit through the old man." The person lying on the ground saw their colleague coming and got up to stand next to the 2 of them. At this moment, the villagers who were working underground came back one after another, and saw a group of people gathered around the village entrance. They all came over to ask what had happened. The early villagers were telling the story on the side. Liu Xingjun looked at the man speaking and said coldly, "Do you want me to wear the bottom of the prison? I will sue you for breaking into houses, forcibly robbing women, and trafficking children. I don't know who will wear the bottom of the prison then." The people beside him were worried when they heard this. They pointed their forefinger at Liu Xingjun and said, "His mother said who broke into private houses to rob women and abduct children." Another person said, "We are members of the public family and the family planning group. Your family has exceeded the birth limit, and it is reasonable and legal for us to take away the mother and child." Liu Xingjun asked, "People from the public family? If you enter the house and rob people and children without saying a word, who knows you are from the public family? Have you presented your documents? Do the public know about your violent law enforcement in the village? What would happen if you told me to report your illegal behavior in the county?" A few people began to feel guilty when they heard this. They confirmed this supermarket, so they didn't inquire beforehand. Anyway, the final result is the same. Why waste time? But doing so is always illegal, no one can report it. Once reported, the outcome of being reported is inevitable. The woman who had previously held Willow Catkins stepped forward and said, "Comrade, no matter what, it is a fact that your family has an extra child. Although we have flaws in our work, the overall direction is not wrong." She took out her work permit and showed it to Liu Xingjun, saying, "We are staff members of the family planning work group. My name is Wang Xia, and here are my documents. We must take your wife and child away today. This is a national policy, and if you want to obstruct it, it is against the country and it is illegal at this moment." The man who was knocked down by Liu Xingjun sneered, "I won't argue with you about the incident where you hit me earlier, but your wife and child, I tell you, you can't keep it." He walked up to Liu Xingjun, leaned in his ear, chuckled lightly, and spoke softly, "When you return to the rehabilitation center, your wife will not have a good ending. This is the price of your punching me." Liu Xingjun lifted his fist and punched him in the face, causing the person to fall to the ground again. Damn it, there are still people in this world who are naturally despicable and insist on reaching out and begging me to beat them up. The person was blinded by a punch. He shook his head and got up from the ground, extending his trembling fingers to Liu Xingjun, shouting in a hoarse voice, "You have the guts. I want to sue you for assaulting state officials. I want you to go to jail." Wang Xiaosheng said, "This man, we have already declared our identity. You even assaulted my colleague, which is your fault. You are breaking the law." Liu Xingjun pinched his wrist and said, "It was your colleague who claimed he had OCD. He just hit him on the right cheek and his left cheek was uncomfortable. He asked me to punch him on the left cheek as well. I helped him with this favor, but you can't misunderstand me." The man angrily said, "Pull your mother's eggs. When did I let you hit me? I'm his mother sick. Aren't you just sick? Otherwise, why are you putting your face close to my ear? OCD is also sick. You. That person trembled with anger, and you didn't say a complete sentence for a long time. Chapter 9. Beating Li Hailong. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Wang Xia saw the situation and said, "We don't care right or wrong about this matter for now. We will take your wife and child away, please don't obstruct us." Zhao Shulan had just coaxed the child and saw that they still wanted to take her and the child away. She quickly hid behind Liu Xingjun and whispered, "We have paid a fine, and the child has a household registration. You have no right to take me and the child away." Wang Xia was surprised and said, "Oh. You registered your child's household? As far as I know, your child was born in the early hours of yesterday morning." The man who was beaten was able to speak normally at this moment, and he let out a sigh of relief, saying, "Your family is almost so poor that you can't afford to pay the fine. Do you have money to pay the fine? Since you have paid the fine, please show us the fine form and household registration book." Zhao Shulan stopped talking. She didn't know if Liu Xingjun had registered his child's household. What if he hadn't? The person sneered and said, "Why, can't you take it out? If you can't take it out, come with us. As he spoke, he came to grab the child in Zhao Shulan's arms, which frightened her and made Zhao Shulan take several steps back, almost falling. Lu Xingjun grabbed his collar, pushed him aside, and then took out his household registration book and fine slip, handing them to Wang Xia. It is obvious that Wang Xia is the leader of this group of people, so it is right to show her the right direction. Wang Xia took the household registration book handed over by Lu Xingjun and flipped to the last page, which contained a receipt. She opened the receipt and it was indeed a fine for exceeding the birth limit. She also looked at the identity information of Liu Xu in her household registration book, and the registration time was written as today. She returned the receipt and household registration book to Lu Xingjun. Sorry, we didn't know that you had already registered this child's household. Since this is a misunderstanding, once the misunderstanding is resolved, let's leave first. The man who was punched twice quickly walked up to Wang Xia and asked, Sister Wang, what's the situation? Aren't these two people taking them away? Wang Xia glared at him and said, they paid a fine and registered their household, how can they take it away? She ignored him and left directly. The person was taken aback and cursed in a low voice, Li Hailong from Dog Day dares to deceive me. As he spoke, he followed the others away. Zhao Shulan exclaimed excitedly, Xingjun, has my child's household registration been obtained? Lu Xingjun let out a sigh. He walked to the bicycle, pushed it on, and handed it over to Zhao Jianjun in the crowd. Uncle, first push in the car and take Shulan back. I'll do something and come back later. Zhao Jianjun took the bicycle, said hello, and limped back with Zhao Shulan. The people around saw that the family planning officer had left and was unable to take Zhao Shulan and her child away, so they all sighed and dispersed. You can still hear the voices of neighbors talking from afar. Why did you directly contact the Liu family when you said about family planning? I guess some unscrupulous ghost reported it, otherwise how could we not go to anyone's house and just go to the Liu family? This person is really wicked. There are many families in the village who have had extra children, and everyone knows which daughter.in.law has had extra children. But during the family planning inspection in the village, 8 out of 10 times they returned empty-handed. Why? Just because the villagers will consciously take cover. No one knows if their family will have an extra child in the future. In case of an extra child, they will have to hide it in someone else's house when they come for inspection in the future. So, no one will report which supermarket. But looking at the situation of the Liu family this time, the members of the family planning team had a clear goal and went directly to his house. No one reported it. Can family planning directly target the target? Lu Xingjun saw everyone scatter and turned to go to Li Hailong's house. Li Hailong and his family were having lunch when they saw Lu Xingjun coming in. Both the couple were taken aback. Li Hohat chuckled and stood up, saying, the main army is here. Have you eaten yet? Let's have some together. Lu Xingjun ignored her and walked to Li Hailong's side in 3 or 2 steps. He grabbed his collar and pulled him up from the stool. Li Hailong exclaimed in fear, what are you doing, Lu Xingjun? Let go of me. Lu Xingjun punched him to the ground, then rode on him and punched him one by one. Li Hailong's thin and small body was pressed under him, unable to get up and could only struggle and howl continuously. Li Hohat pounced on Lu Xingjun upon seeing this, pulling him and crying, God damn Lu Xingjun, you let go of my man, you let go, don't hit him. Seeing that she couldn't pull Lu Xingjun, she sat down on the ground, patting her thighs with both hands and crying, someone here, kill me. Lu Xingjun is going to kill my man, come here quickly. Lu Xingjun looked at her and said, keep shouting, bring the whole village here and show everyone the unethical things your family has done. Li Hohat's crying came to an abrupt end. Li Hailong ignored the wailing and was deeply shocked in his heart. Lu Xingjun. How would he know? Didn't he tell that person that he couldn't reveal his information? Isn't it said that the informant's information is confidential? How could Liu Xingjun know? Shouldn't it be deceiving oneself? He hesitated and said, "What are you talking about? What immoral thing did I do?" Liu Xingjun pretended not to know when he arrived, and then greeted him in the face and said, "You still pretend, did you lead the family planning to my house? You his mother is really a wicked ghost, even doing such heartless things." Li Hohat saw that Liu Xingjun had started beating his own man again, and rushed forward to grab Liu Xingjun's hand. "Don't hit my man, if you have the ability, you can hit me, you can kill me." Liu Xingjun shook off her hand and stood up. Li Hailong saw Liu Xingjun release himself and struggled to get up from the ground. I don't know what you're talking about." Upon hearing this, Liu Xingjun raised his fists and pretended to hit him. He covered his head with both hands and hid behind Li Hohat. Li Hohat looked at Liu Xingjun and said in a trembling voice, "Liu Xingjun, please be reasonable. We were wrong, but you were not right to hit someone." Liu Xingjun stared at Li Hailong and said coldly, "Don't provoke me in the future, otherwise I'll see you and hit you again and again." After speaking, he turned around and walked out. "Wait." Liu Xingjun stopped and turned his head to look at Li Hailong. Li Hailong swallowed his saliva, his eyes dodged, and he didn't know how to speak. Liu Xingjun turned around and left. Seeing that Liu Xingjun was about to leave, Li Hailong hurriedly said, "Well, Xingjun, it was my lard that deceived me. I shouldn't have reported you to the commune for being overweight. Please forgive me." Liu Xingjun looked at him without speaking. Li Hailong awkwardly grabbed his clothes and said, "Can you please not tell the villagers that I reported you?" Oh, he knew how someone like Li Hailong could truly realize his mistake. He is now lowering his voice, but he is afraid that he will reveal that he is a whistleblower, and their family's reputation in the village will be tarnished. After all, nowadays, many families have extra children. No one is willing to deal with someone who is behind the scenes reporting. Li Hailong saw that Liu Xingjun didn't pay attention to him and left. He spat a mouthful of phlegm on the ground and cursed softly, "Damn it, don't offend me in the future, otherwise I'll see if I don't kill you." Chapter 10. 5 years later. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 5-year-old Liu Xu is lying on the Kong table, watching Liu Xiaofeng do her homework. "Third sister, how do you pronounce this?" She pointed to the N in the Chinese textbook and asked Xiaofeng. Xiaofeng stopped writing with her pen and said, "This is like our door, red NE." She continued with her homework. "What about this one?" "Lu, what about this one?" Xiaofeng ignored her and continued to do her homework. She pushed Xiaofeng's arm and said, "Third sister, teach me how to pronounce this." Xiaofeng was pushed like this, and the pencil in her hand ran across the notebook, leaving a long horizontal line. She slammed down her pen and roared, "Liu Xu, are you bothering me? If you want to learn, go find second sister and ask her to teach you. Don't disturb me with my homework." Liu Xu pursed her lips, tears flickering in her big eyes, and stared at Liu Xiaofeng motionless. Xiaofeng also looked at her unwillingly. In the end, Xiaofeng was defeated first. She sighed helplessly and said, "Xiaoxiu, sister needs to do homework. You can go find." Before she could finish speaking, Liu Xu quietly flipped down from the Kong and walked out with her shoes bouncing back and forth. She walked into the kitchen and saw Dahua cooking. She moved over to her side, hugged her legs, and looked up, asking, "Big sister, have you seen second sister?" Lu Dahua was kneading her face when she saw her wet eyes. She said, "I didn't see it. I guess I went out to play again." "What's wrong with Xiaoxiu? Who bullied you?" Liu Xu lowered her head and remained silent. Dahua didn't say anything when she saw the Willow Catkins, so she stopped asking. The little one was just watching the third party do their homework. Coming here now is nothing more than having another conflict with the third party. These two people are arguing every day, and in the blink of an eye, they will reconcile, so there's no need to pay attention. However, the fourth person didn't speak up this time, so it seems that it's their fault. I'm sorry to say that. Liu Xu saw that the elder sister had no intention of comforting her, and she couldn't find the second sister in the kitchen, so she walked back to the room with her feet on her shoes. At the door, she hid behind the door and secretly observed the third person. Xiaofang saw the Willow Catkins with half of her head stretched out at the door, pretending not to see her and continuing to do her homework. Liu Xu saw that third sister didn't see her, so she walked slowly to the edge of the Kong, took off her shoes, and climbed up the Kong with a snort. Then the buttocks moved and moved, moved and moved to the edge of the Kong table. She secretly looked at Xiaofang and saw that she ignored her, so she had to sit quietly and watch her do her homework. Xiaofang ignored her and began to read aloud as she wrote, E, Wu, U, U. The door was pushed open, and then Zhao Shulan's voice came. From now on, you are not allowed to go out and play after school. After finishing your homework, I will help your older sister with work. Did you hear me? Liu Xu heard her mother's voice and knew that her parents had returned. She pouted her buttocks and slipped off the Kong, running out happily. Running too fast, my short legs didn't cross the threshold and I fell to the ground with a loud bang. She looked up at the entrance with tears in her eyes, and saw that her father had already entered the kitchen, and her mother was teasing her with the ears of her second sister. Second sister tiptoed and grinned, not even looking at herself. She put away her shrunken lips, got up and patted the dirt on her body. She first looked at her mother and saw that her expression was not right, so she turned around and entered the kitchen. Dad, you're back. She ran over and crawled into Liu Xingjuan's arms. Liu Xingjun was sitting on a stool drinking water when he saw Liu Xu running over and quickly moved the teapot beside his mouth. He placed the teapot on a nearby table, picked up the Willow Catkins, and let her sit on his lap. You're already 5 years old and still restless, just as mischievous as your second sister. Liu Xu didn't care what her father said. She nestled in Liu Xingjuan's arms and looked up at him, asking, Dad, did you buy candy? Today, my parents went to the commune and said they wanted to buy me candy to eat. Liu Xingjun seemed to have just remembered this and exclaimed in surprise, Oh my, Dad forgot about this. What should we do? Upon hearing this, Liu Xu looked at him without crying. Dad lied and promised to buy her sugar when he came back, but he forgot such an important thing. The more she thought about it, the more sad she became, and she collapsed into tears. Liu Xingjun wiped away the tears from Liu Xu's face and said with heartache, Oh no, stop crying. Dad is teasing you. He took out a handful of big white rabbit milk candy from his pocket and handed it to Liu Xu, saying, Look what this is. Liu Xu cried sadly and took a moment to glance at her father's palm. A big white rabbit milk candy. She stopped crying immediately. Not only did he not cry, but he also smiled and grabbed the candy in his father's hand. Upon seeing her smile, Liu Xingjun blew out a big bubble of snot and sneered, Oh, look at you, you're so dirty. As he spoke, he reached out to wipe off his nose and wiped his hand clean on the sole of his shoe. Liu Xu ignored her father's disapproval and peeled off a piece of candy, placing it on Liu Xingjuan's lips. Dad, eat candy, she said. Liu Xingjun chuckled and opened his mouth to take it, pursed it and said, It's really sweet. Liu Xu smiled and peeled another one, then got off Liu Xingjuan's leg and ran to Dehua with sugar in her hand. With a milky voice, she said, Big sister, eat sugar. Dehua bent down and took the sugar from Liu Xu's hand into her mouth. She touched her head and said with a smile, Thank you, Xiao Su. Liu Xu returned to Liu Xingjuan's arms with satisfaction, took out 3 candies from his hand and put them in his left pocket, and put the remaining candies in his own pocket. Then he peeled a piece of sugar and stuffed it into his mouth, causing his sweet eyes to squint. Liu Xingjun joked, Fourth, why don't you peel one for your mother, second sister, and third sister too? Liu Xu patted her left pocket and said, I keep it. Then go peel one for your mother now. Liu Xu listened to the sound of her mother scolding her second sister outside, shaking her head like a tambourine. De Hua finished cooking and shouted towards the door, Mom, stop scolding her and come in for dinner. Xiaomei, go call Xiaofang for dinner. Lu Xiaomei, who was granted amnesty in the courtyard, said hello and ran to the middle room. Liu Xu saw her mother come in and saw that her face had improved a bit. She took out a candy from her pocket and handed it to her, saying, Mom, don't be angry, eat candy. Zhao Shulan took the candy and finally stopped pulling her face. At the dinner table, De Hua said to Lu Jingjun, Dad, I think Xiao Su really enjoys studying. Why don't you send her to preschool? Upon hearing this, Zhao Shulan felt a surge of guilt towards her eldest daughter. After giving birth to the fourth child, the family lent money to the fourth child and registered a household. In the following years, the couple was busy paying off debts, which delayed the eldest child's studies. By the time the two of them finished paying off the accounts, the eldest was already 11 years old. At this moment, the two realized that their eldest daughter should have gone to school long ago. The two hurriedly sent the eldest son to school, but within 2 days, the eldest son was unwilling to go to school. When the couple asked, they found out that the eldest child studied with her 6 or 7-year-old children every day. The difference in age and height caused her to feel deeply insecure, so she was unwilling to read. So, the boss dropped out of school after only 1 week of school. Lu Jingjun also felt regretful when he remembered this matter. The eldest was delayed, but the next 3 couldn't make the same mistake again, so the second and third were sent to preschool as soon as they turned 6 years old. Although Xiao Si likes to follow her 2 sisters and ask questions, she has just turned 5 and is still too early to send her to school. After finishing his last bite of noodles, he put down his bowl and said, I'll give it to you when I turn 6 next year. It's still a bit small now.